maybe try and find something that's not in the sun.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to get started because we are 2 minutes after. My name is Kat. I'm one of the founders of Be Epic. Heather's my business partner. I'm sure most of you know her. Some of you know me. Today, we're excited to have this webinar and bring the VP Chief Appraiser of Equity Solutions, Rick Kobzeff, to our webinar, where he's going to share his perspective on how the NAR settlement is affecting the home appraisal process. Last month, we met with the beautiful Kelly Court. She shared her perspective. That was a really great turnout. You guys had a lot of questions about appraisals, and so she graciously connected us to Rick. And this is sort of a follow-up to that conversation. Hopefully we can answer your questions, give you the clarity you need, and all walk away with a little bit more knowledge on this topic. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Rick. He has 18 years experience. I know he works closely with Kelly, but you can take it away and feel free to share your screen. If you guys do have questions, pop them in the chat. And just a reminder, please mute yourself if you do have other conversations and calls and noises going on in the background.
Okay. I take it everyone can see the screen?
We can.
You can? Okay, great. Good, perfect. So my name is Rick Kobzeff. As Heather mentioned, I've been appraising for 18 years. I am the Chief Appraiser for Equity Solutions, which is an AMC. We work very closely with Kelly and her team. And so we're just going to talk about NAR, and we're going to just go right into it. And let's just get started here. And I got a new computer yesterday, so this is our overview. We're really going to just talk about these key points. I'm going to talk about a couple case studies, and I'm going to just talk about what appraisers think. I've done quite a bit of polling and spoke with a bunch of appraisers just to get their insight and their opinion on what they're going to be doing with this as well. So, of course, appraisers now must obtain the compensation details directly from the brokers and agents, as the settlement bans MLS from communicating offers to the buyer's representatives. And so now what appraisers are going to have to do is get on the phone and call and try to get the information from the brokers and from the the agents. What we tend to find out sometimes, just think of an appraisal. It comes in, typically it's a 5-day turn time. The appraiser does their analysis. They figure out what comparables they're going to use for a report. And now they might have like 1 or 2 days to figure out this concession piece. But oftentimes what we find is agents just don't get back to appraisers. They just don't call them back. They don't get back to them in a timely manner. So what a lot of appraisers are going to do is they are just going to put we go by USPAP. It's our rule book, if you want to call it that. And what we'll do is put in the normal course of business. We have tried to find out these concessions. We've tried to find out. We got no response. And so that's kind of how that will work on that part from a lot of appraisers' standpoints on that piece. But they are going to try open communication between appraisers, brokers, and agents. That's what they really want to see, is that collaboration. And I think in a lot of terms it's going to happen, but in some terms, we're going to talk about that, because this case studies are going to be these interesting pieces that I think will really open up what really is going to happen. So what we have to do is analyze the market with the inquiries. We have to see what the market reaction is to any concession currently. And now we have this extra concession. Is there a reaction to that? Is there a reaction to the sales price? Is it going to affect that purchase price now? And that's what we really will look into. And a lot of appraisers right now are on a wait and see kind of basis, because it's new. We don't know if it's going to affect. The first 3 months, it might not do anything. And then as we start to analyze and start to get more information, then we might go, oh, wait a minute. Now, this particular market, there is an effect on the value. And we're going to have to now figure out what that is and how is that going to affect that purchase price on the comp. It's not really going to affect more on your subject. What we're looking at is the comparables. And that's what we have to take a look at. And how does the market react? So for instance, if comp 1, 2, 3, and 4 are 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, so the market really accepts a $5,000 concession for closing costs or whatever it may be. But then you got your best comp number 5, which you really want to use, and there's a $50,000 concession. That's not atypical to the market because everything is 5. Why is it 50? Now we have to dig into what was that for? Was it for repairs? What was all that for? Or did they include the compensation piece in there as well? And what does the list price look to the sales price? Because what currently happens is how a lot of appraisers will look at concessions is if the purchase price is $300,000 and the list price was $300,000 and they give a $10,000 concession, they did not raise the original purchase price, so that is not affecting the value of the property. However, when it's a $300,000 purchase and it was $290 and they're giving a $10,000 concession and they raise the price now to the $300,000, that means they raised the price to cover the concession of $10,000. And that's typically what you see. So now it is affecting the purchase price, but is it really affecting the purchase price or the value of the property? And why I say that is what if every single comparable is doing the same thing within the market? It could not, it might not really be affecting it. Now, if all the other comparables have not done anything and then it is raising it, it could. And that really is depending on how the appraiser's interpretation of what that market is doing and how the market reaction is to that comparable. And I talk a lot of appraisers, so sorry if you have a question, let me know. So what this does is this is an opportunity for appraisers to reassess and demonstrate the value and look at the process. It is an opportunity for them to actually get to more agents, talk with more agents. Myself personally, I have agents in every single area in Sacramento, Roseville, Placer, and El Dorado that I could call at any time. I can give them a call. They call me back and I'll talk about a market, because I believe agents are an amazing resource to appraisers. And some appraisers don't take that journey. That is my journey. They're amazing resources. They could see the houses. I'll call and say, hey, what is this house? Why did it sell so low? I know you toured it because you tour everything in your area. You're probably was the first one in there. And they say, oh yeah, what we found out was it was just older. It just, the floor plan was funky. And most buyers didn't care for it. And so that's what we find as we come along with these new things that are happening. Comments from appraisers. These are actual comments that I just called and talked and I just put it right in. They said most agents don't return calls for basic questions. So why would they call me back for this question? It's too early. That was probably the main one. It's too early. They need to wait and see. Currently, Fannie and Freddie do not have any type of direction for appraisers at this point on how to handle the commission and how that's going to work. And we really see the wait and see. And a lot of them lean to in the analysis, there hasn't been an impact on appraisals in all the previous things. So we all know that in our MLSs, it was there. This is what they're getting paid. And no one ever addressed that. We haven't addressed it for years. No one said, oh, it's 2.5% or 3%. Oh, well, we need to address it. It's been published for years. Now, is it published correctly? Maybe, maybe not. We've all seen where it says 2.5. You get a file, the file comes back and it says it's been increased to 3, it's been cut to 1.5. So a lot of appraisers are really going to take that stance of wait and see. And a lot of them that I've talked to are really not going to really do much to it until Fannie and Freddie actually put something out on how they look at it. Obviously, we do look at what the market's doing, but it is so early to tell. Unless it's an anomaly, $50,000 concession that's huge. And that's why it's really important. It's what I tell every realtor is understand we write a story. That's what we do. Every single appraisal is a story. It is a book. It is a mini book. It is a cliff note, however you want to look at it. So what the importance is where do we get our information? We get it from you. In your listings, in the MLS, we read everything that's written. We look at everything. And if we can, oftentimes it'll say, you know, a $20,000 concession for the roof repair and, you know, roof and pest two, or roof and plumbing, or we gave $5,000 for the flooring. So then we kind of know what it's going towards. Then you just have there's concession on the bottom, and they'll just put, you know, 20,000. They don't put what it's for, why it's for. You try to call them. So what I always let everyone know is we use your information to write our story. So the better the information for us, the better the story for everybody. And we really, really rely on that information from you guys. All right, this is really fun. Case study number 1. And this is the interesting. So I was talking to one of my buddies the other day, and he says, hey, I got this story for you. This is pretty crazy. And I'm like, okay, what is it? So from my understanding, they had a clause in the contract. So the multiple offer where you put a clause in, and then, you know, if you settled at 500 and someone offers 515, the buyer now needs to come up to 515. And they have this little clause in this contract. So what happened is a realtor here in our area had a friend call and said, hey, hi, Heather. I'm going to use you today. Is that all right, Heather? We're good. Hi, Heather. My name is Rick. I am a real estate appraiser, and I want to know what 123 Main has. It's pending. Can you tell me what can you tell me the contract price and what it's going to close at? So the realtor kind of hem-hawed and goes, well, you know, it's kind of, oh, but, you know, it would really help, you know, working on this report, it would really help me if I could really lay and put this value and know that I could put it as one of my comps, and I could lean my value towards this sale. Realtor snap, broke, got pressured, felt it was okay, says, you know, it's pending at 575. A day later, he received a letter and a call from the board, MLS, the board, and he got in trouble because that realtor reported him and said, this is, my friend called, the lady or whoever called was not an appraiser, just said that they were, reported him to the board for telling them what that price was. And then my buddy, he's an appraiser as well. He spoke with realtor, and the realtor said, I'm going to just tell you this. I will never tell anybody anything again about anything other than it's pending close to the price. I'm not going to divulge no information about concessions. I'm not going to divulge any information about what the buyer's agent's getting paid. I am going to do the minimum that I need to do. That's what I'm going to do. And so what the case in point is if I'm an appraiser and I called you guys and asked you what the concession is, and this was just part of a talk with a bunch of appraisers, are you going to tell me, or has that become a privacy issue? Or does the buyer's agent say in a contract, you can't tell them what I'm making? That's private. It's private information. Now, we all know it's been on MLS forever. But now what happens is if we need to find out what's going to happen with that. Does the buyer say, you can't give that information out because I don't want people knowing what that cost is? And it just raises a lot of questions, because in this particular instance, what we have now is we have an agent who, thought he was probably doing the right thing in the spirit of the law, but in the letter of the law, obviously he wasn't. And now he's at a point like, I'm not telling anybody anything. So just think of that nature. Think of, as any of us, would you want people to know how much you're making on every single deal you do? And will that be acceptable for you? It's just a question. And that's where a lot of appraisers are like, well, wait a minute, we have a privacy issue here. I'm not party to the contract, right? I'm not on your contract. I can call and say, hey, Heather, what did this sell for? And you could say, well, I don't know, A, who you are, B, you're not party to this contract. You're not part of this. So why should I tell you what everyone's getting paid, other than I'm going to say what the concessions are? But now every board is different. I'm not sure what you guys can and cannot say, because I'm not, that's not my journey. But those are questions that a lot of appraisers have, because now they're like, well, sometimes they talk to us, sometimes they don't. But what if they're not going to tell us? So this happened to me. This was an interesting one. So I had to call an agent, and I called the agent, and I'm like, hey, and I didn't even say anything. It was, oh, hi, Rick. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, this is what's going on. So I have that second contract that I'm going to be sending over to you, because we're going to give $48,500 back to the buyer. And no one knows about it. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do this to do these repairs, what we found, And I said, oh, this is Rick, the appraiser for 123 Main Street. I think you got me confused with somebody else. Not my deal, no addresses or anything. And so once again, a lot of appraisers, when they think of concessions and they think of this stuff, what they do is they tend to go, okay, wait a minute now, not all of them, but there are some that like, okay, so what kind of deal are you doing on the side that you're not telling anybody and you didn't tell me? Now you start thinking, okay, what else is going on here? Like, am I getting all the information? And that's where a lot of appraisers are in that wait and see category. They want to see what the market's going to do. They want to see what's going to go on. And then at that point in time, they'll decide what concessions will be adjusted for. So let's say you do a seller consent. Let's say the buyer says, hey, it's whatever, 3%. But then you go and you start looking and you start talking to other agents, and everything in the whole market is 1.5. You call a couple agents on the same street that sold, and they're like, oh, we only did 1.5. They said, oh, just 1.1, 1.5%, 1.5%. So then we take a look and go, okay, wait a minute. So the market recognizes 1.5%. They negotiated grade at 3, but I'm not going to take it and take that concession, and I'm not going to adjust it for, 12,000 or whatever that number is. I'm only going to give it 6, because although they might have got paid the 3%, the market only shows a 1.5. So I'm only going to do 1.5. So we have a lot of, that's what we see, what a lot of appraisers are talking about right now. They're going to really, some of them are going to hone down now. Some of them I talk to, they're not going to call agents. They're just going to do their appraisals the way they're going to do them at this time till something comes up. Then we have the other side of the spectrum where a lot of appraisers are going to just call every agent, say that they got a phone call back, talk to every single person. They want to know the exact details of the transaction. And then some are on the 50-50 side. If it looks like mainly everything seems to be the same, then they're going to be fine with it unless there's this big, huge anomaly. And that's kind of, it's a lot of, unfortunately, wait and see right now, just to see how the market reacts, because the market might not react to anything. And then there might be a market reaction that is very prevalent depending on the area and the location and depending on what the appraiser decides to do. Some of them are, there's kind of three types of appraisers. There's ones that kind of dive backwards. There's ones that kind of dive down, and then there's ones that kind of dive really extreme overboard. And so it just depends on how they look at it and what they decide to do with each individual file, because every file is different. There might be a file that there's nothing, and then some of them will be in the contract, and then they'll deal with it at that time. And they just have to see what it looks like and what the market says and what the reaction of the market is. All right. Any questions from anybody?
I think Randy might have a question. Do you want to come off mute, Randy, and ask what your question to the group was?
Yeah, so basically what I was saying was that on most of our listings here in Central Florida, most of the listing agents are still having co-broke commissions with the buyer's agent. So we're not seeing that much of seller is not paying buyer's commission yet. So I think that's probably going to take about 3 months before we even get to that stage to where you're going to have to say, hey, let me put the buyer's agent commission in the concession. From what my broker has said is, let's separate those two from each other. If there is a concession from the seller paying for repairs, you put that in one paragraph. And if there is a co-broke that needs to be done where the seller's paying buyer's commission, that'll be on a separate line. But again, we're not putting that in our sales contract because the sales contract is between the buyer and the seller. So there's an addendum that actually we've been discussing about the buyer's broker agreement or the seller to buyer's broker commission. And that addendum is going to be sent to mortgage brokers and title company so that the lender knows exactly if the seller's paying a commission or buyer's paying commission, and also title company, because title company has been discussing about this, saying, in the past, title company would call us and say, hey, what's your buyer's commission or what's your listing commission? And we would verbally say it. But now it's a way where if you come to the closing table and we're sitting there at the table to close and the buyer says, well, I didn't agree on that, or seller says, I didn't agree on that, what happens then? Are we not going to close?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's super new for everybody. And, and it might take another, like you said, 30, 90 days. It could take 6 months before it even affects any kind of an appraisal, because what happens if you only have one sale in that market? Well, you can't really base anything on one sale. Now, if you have 10, you can take a look at it a little better, and now you have some information. But what I tell appraisers, it's simple. If you can't prove it, then you don't adjust for it. Period. It does not matter, because what you have to do is you write a defensible report, and how you have to write it is you have to think, I'm in front of a judge, and the judge has asked me, how did I prove this adjustment? And I have to explain how I did it. And if you cannot prove it, then you don't adjust for it. You can say you've analyzed it, and usually I'll say I have analyzed this market area, or I've analyzed this amenity, and there is currently no credible market reaction to having a extended patio in the front. And it was considered in my overall evaluation, but no line item adjustment is necessary. And you just know, I'm telling everyone what I did. I'm telling them why I did it, and I'm telling them how it ends. And that's kind of what the same kind of situation you're going to get with this concession piece as well. I really think depending on how it's all done and taken care of. So
I have a question, Rick. So if you were just to give us like high level best standard, what you as appraisers need us to do in cooperation for you guys? Because I like your case study. That's really interesting. What would you tell all of us? Just like, this would be best standard in this scenario now, and this is how we need you guys to cooperate with us in your perfect world.
In my perfect world, and I know you guys get really busy, the best case standard would be this, is if the appraiser calls you or texts you, I would just say, you know what, get back to them as soon as possible and just say it was 1.5%. And I don't think you need to get into all the logistics. I think texting now, when I call agents most of the time, it's, you could leave a message, however, text is faster.
Yeah.
Because, and not to be funny, but we all know if the phone rings, you're kind of, but if that buzzer goes off on your phone, you're like, okay, who is it? Oh, who just texted me? We all like, we got to see what happened. And I think that's the best case scenario. You don't necessarily have to call and talk to the appraiser. You know, I mean, you're busy and I get it. And you got things going on. I just think, boom, just right back, wham, you know, and do a quick text and just say, this is where we're at with it right now. And if it's a bigger concession, say, listen, 1.5% went to the agent. However, the other piece is, you know, we had a roof, they're replacing the roof, they're going to fix the roof. We're helping with the, you know, seller's closing costs, we're helping with that. And I think that would be their best case scenario, is just getting back as soon as you can, for sure.
Do you think, and I mean, will you be calling agents on pending transactions? Do we need to like verify you're really the appraiser if someone calls us?
Man, I would, just to be frank, I really would. This guy, like I said, he just really got taken back on that.
Yeah.
And he got in, from what I understand, he got a hand slap and a half. And it was not fun. And he's like, I'll never do that again. I'll never. And how you do that is send me your e-card. We all have them. Can you just punch me your e-card over? Or, hey, you know, can you give me your, you know, license number?
Yeah.
I want to verify on ASC. It's asc.gov is where it's called. You can go on, you pick your state, you can figure out their name, and then you can click it. It'll tell you that, it comes up and tell you their licensing level. It tells you who they are, where they're from, all that stuff like that. It's all public information.
Okay. That's very helpful. That case study, I like the case studies a lot. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah. And it just happens. And once again, in this particular case, he thought he was doing the right thing, and it wasn't a fun journey for him. So.
Yeah, makes sense. Anne Marie, did you have a question or a comment? I think I heard you.
Gonna ask him where to look it up. He answered it. Yeah.
Okay.
But I did post in the chat. So I'm in SoCal and we have CRMLS, which is I think the largest in the country. And what they've chosen to do is that when we close out, we're supposed to note, and they're categorized, what closing costs went for what. So I posted a couple examples. So financing costs, property improvement costs, buyer broker fee, closing costs, other costs, and then if there's a comment section. So if everybody's using that properly, at least in my market, that should be pretty transparent and help the appraisers. But like you said, we'll see.
Wait and see. It's really becomes a wait and see. And that's where Fannie and Freddie stand. I did see something in the chat about how does the concession affect the value of the property. So the way we look at it is this: if it's a $300,000 sale and the list price is $300,000 and they give a $10,000 concession, that means a couple things. Either the buyer has to sell that property, they're buying a new home, they've got to get rid of it. It's the first buyer they've had in 60 days. They're going to pay those concessions. It is the buyer giving them the money. They're giving their money to them. And I'll give you a great example. I had one, I did the appraisal on it. It was a brand new home. They had to sell their house. They had to get it done. They, at the time, the agent put it on, in my belief, really on the higher end, and they didn't get anything. They dropped it down to more of a reasonable purchase price. This couple hopped on it, and to keep the buyer, because they had to close for their new home, they gave the buyer $11,000 in concessions. And they bought down their rate by $22,000. So they gave the buyer $33,000 to buy their house. They didn't raise anything. It's what they gave to them. So that is not affecting the value of the home because the seller is deciding that they need to sell it. We got to give it away. Where it does affect the value of the home is when it's a $300,000 purchase and you raise it to $320,000 and then you give a $20,000 concession. Now, and it doesn't really affect the subject as much as it affects the comparable, because the comparable now is going to show us that you raised it 20 to cover the concession of 20, because it's 20, it's like for like, 20 for 20. That means in most cases, i.e., especially, I was just at a conference and they are really looking at how appraisers deal with concessions. And 96% of the time on this poll that they did, appraisers don't really adjust properly for concessions nationwide, according to Fannie and Freddie. So what they're doing now is they're looking into it and they're going to say, listen, if it needs to be, if they raise that price, you need to see what the market says. And then what ends up happening, it's not 320, you subtract 20, bottom line, everything the same, it's 300,000 is what that price is really worth in that particular market. And that's what they're really looking at this time. They had a whole thing about concessions and how they're not adjusting properly. And what they want is just what the market says. Is it affect the value of the property? And most appraisers will follow that rule. FHA requires, in most cases, some of them you can get around it, but a lot of the FHA, they require that concessions of some sort are dealt with, and that you are going to go in, and if it's 5,000, you're subtracting 5,000. So what a lot of people don't know is everyone in March got their FHA love letters, is what I'll call it. They audit all our files, and what they do is they go in and they do an audit. And if some of them, it's just a, hey, next time when you're doing this is your little warning. Please make sure you're doing this, this, and this. I know of 3 appraisers who are great appraisers. All of them received 36 hours of continuing ed to remain on the FHA panel, and they had to get it done in 2 months. And then one case where, we're human, we're not perfect, we make mistakes. And they will look at 2 of his reports from FHA. They will look at 2 of his reports every month for 6 months to make sure that they are liking what they see. So we get scrutinized for everything, and that's part of that. And they're really going to start looking at concessions a lot harder, and that's the GSEs. So, any other questions?
Heather, you're asking for Adrian to jump in. Too many scenarios as to the sales price. Yeah. So Adrian, what's interesting is, and hi everyone, Kelly Court, Guild Mortgage, Court team, Rick, thank you so much for saying yes to this invitation. And it's Adrian, I would love to invite you into the conversation here to put your point of view.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up some really good points, Rick, but I would also take into consideration there's so many different factors or reasons why people are doing that. I think what we end up doing is setting a precedent for listing too high and not listing appropriate for the market, just to offset for an appraiser. When you could pull comps, which I've done in this last listing that I was doing, the situation was we negotiated stronger on the purchase. We wanted to sell faster. And so we listed for lower price just so we can get the home sold within 2 days instead of 30 days because we had 30 days to sell. So I think there's just a lot of different scenarios that could run into this. And so I mean, I think what you're saying is great. I would just say that there are other factors that are at play here. And I'd hate to have to start listing my homes way too high, only so that I can give concessions back. I think sometimes that's just a better way to work the deal for individuals because the purchasing power has been reduced. I mean, ultimately the buyer is paying the concessions. The seller's really not, because until we have an offer, we don't have anything. And so, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to point out the fact that there's so many scenarios that I just don't think that's one thing to think on.
Yeah. Oh, there is a ton, and you're right. So we have, I was looking and talking to another appraiser, and what he does is we run a 1004 MC, and it tells us concessions, it tells us everything. And what he does is he looks at what the mean or the mode or the average is, and that is how he addresses concessions. So if the medium is 5,000 and people gave 20 here and 20 there and 5 there, he will only adjust 5,000 across the board, because that is what he believes what the market is looking at. And you see a lot of appraisers are going to start to adapt that as well. I think we're going to see that, but every case is different for sure.
Well, so Rick, I mean, to Adrian's point, if you also see that a house is like listed very much so undervalued to what other homes, you can also compensate for that in the concessions, right? When you guys are, because when you value the house itself, removing the concessions, if a house is listed 20 grand under every house that sold that had no concessions, you guys factor that in, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. So what I do is when I look at that, and if it's selling for 20 less, to me that there's something wrong with that, because it's not following what market trend is. And it is in the report, but it is in the back of the report. My first 3 comps, usually for me, those are the best things that I have. That is my value. 4, 5, and 6 are supporting comps. 7 is maybe a pending, that particular thing scenario, that would end up over in 6. I'll put it in the report because it's probably next door and we have to, because you can't ignore it because they're going to ask you about it either way. So you might as well just head it straight on. And I've had people come, I mean, I have an underwriter come back and say, hey, you know, why this is a house next door, you know, this is where we're at. This is what it, you know, is closed for. And I could say that it's within ranges, but these are the best ones that I feel it's in our range. So it's in the range, it's there, but 1, 2, and 3 are the best sales that we have. And that's what the value is going to be based on. So.
Got it. Somebody
then-
asked, what about variable range listings, 500K to 550K?
We don't really see a lot of that in our market where they do that. You know, we don't see a whole lot, but I'll just tell you, our state regulator, you could use it still if it ranges like that. I mean, it's usable. I think what most appraisers would end up doing is probably talk with the agent and find out, like, you have this kind of variable thing. Why are we doing it? What do you guys think? And that type of thing like that on that. But we don't really see a lot of that in our area that we do business anyways.
So I have another question that's kind of not even on this topic. And actually, Adrian and I are in the same market. We're doing a transaction together right now, and my buyer is a VA buyer.
Mm-hmm.
My clients were really concerned about the value of this house and if it was going to appraise, and the comps were really challenging on it. And I was talking to Adrian and I said, well, I listened to an appraiser panel once, and they said VA appraisers, if they're doing a VA loan, try really, really, really hard to get the value because they want vets to get into homes. What is your opinion on that? Because when we get into the, you know, competitive markets, it's always like, we don't take a VA, don't take a VA buyer, don't take a VA buyer, don't take a VA buyer, right? But I kind of disagree with that. And I would love to get your take on it, because when I've had to deal with, you know, 20 offers on a house and I have the VA buyer, I always tell that story to the agent. I'm like, don't be afraid of our buyer because they're a VA. They all need a chance, right? But I would love to just get your input since we have you here.
First off, if there's any veterans on a call, I would love to say thank you for your service. Secondly, I agree with you 100%. VA, do not be afraid of the VA. And I have heard that so many times from different times when I call. They're like, oh, I don't take VA buyers. And I'm like, I don't understand why. I'll just tell you what, it is a VA appraisal. They are, you know, they have their minimum property standard requirements, but all I need to do is put 3 sales. They don't even want us to put actives and pendings or anything in. And if we do, they prefer we write it in. We don't even put it in their grid. And I will tell you, I've been on the panel for 8 years. I have called Tidewater 3 times in 8 years. 2 of them I did change because they gave me some information that I really, really thought was really good. One of them, unfortunately, she went way out of the area to get it. And I should have wrote her a letter and I didn't, because I appraised it at like 340 and she wouldn't give it to the VA. And 2 weeks later, I go back and I like to check, and guess what she sold it for? 340.
Yep.
My appraised value. Yep. She sold for 340. VA is wonderful. Let me explain minimum property requirements. Most appraisers, including myself, I will do everything within my power to get that veteran in that home. I will do whatever with staying in my lane, of course, but you can always find it, and the VA looks at it. They do underwrite it. They do run it through a scenario. And I have never in 8 years, that's me knocking on wood or a little up here, had any, because the VA has their staff appraisers who look at our reports. They go and they scrutinize them. They look at everything. And I have never had any one of them come back to me and tell me you're too high on value or you need to change your value. I have never had that happen. I've had a few little clerical errors, which were not perfect, but it's a great way to go. Understand that every scenario is different. So I'll use in my area, it's a 7-day turn time. And it does not start the day that you order it. It starts the next day. It's 7 business days. Weekends are not included. And if the VA is closed, that holiday is also not included. So that is how the turn times work. There's some 11-day turn times. Every turn time is different, but that is how they look at it. And it's an amazing system, and it's really amazing for the veteran. It really is. And like I said, I'm doing one right now, and they remodeled it. They missed a whole bunch of little things. In fact, after this call, I got to go do the 1004D and fix it, because certain things you're like, okay, come on, you can't have all this. It needs to be correct for the person. And that's what we really look at. We look at, chipped and peeling paint, health and safety, just to make sure it meets the minimum property requirement. But it's a great system to go. And I don't know why people don't go there, but I know I've heard a lot of that. But I agree. It's a great program for the veterans, for sure.
Thank you. That's a tool, I feel like, in our toolboxes to be able to say that to an agent on the other side when you're competing, right?
Oh, yeah.
To know that it came right from the mouth of an appraiser. So I've heard it twice now. So thanks.
It's great.
I wanted to come behind Rick again. Thank you. Rick heads up our panel nationwide. So when we need quick turn times, he helps us find quick turn times all across the country, other than New York, because we do not serve New York. And Rick is our power partner. He is part of our team. He helps us get offers accepted because of quick contingency periods. So Rick is invaluable to our team.
Thank you.
We absolutely love Rick. So Rick, again, thank you so much for investing your time and talent into this Be Epic audience. Heather and Kat have built an incredible community within a community and beyond of people who are really looking to be exceptional. And Heather and Kat have done a great job at bringing in pros to give us guidance through this interesting pivot in our industry. So thank you, Heather and Kat. Thank you, Rick. Anybody else want to open dialogue or situations while we have this ridiculously talented man here?
Yeah. And you guys, if any time you have a question, I'm always available, and I will always answer you. You can email me. Kelly can give you my information. And if I don't know it, I'll find out. And how I find out is I have a great network of appraisers that I call and say, listen, I have this home here in the middle of Texas or wherever it's at. What do you think? What's the market look like? What's going on there? And I just really try to get that information out, and we talk with them that way. So
you guys, if you're having issues getting appraisals turned around, and Anne-Marie has her hand up, sorry, Anne-Marie, to jump in front of you, but if you're having issues with your lenders getting quick appraisal turn times, please reach out to me. We're happy to help expedite things and ensure, especially when there's multiple offers on the table. All of our clients go through underwriting, and we position them to close within 15 days. Sometimes we can even do it sooner if Rick can get an appraiser in there quickly, which he has never failed us, you guys. He's incredible. He's always got great people. Also, if you have favorite appraisers in your market area and you want them added to the panel for Equity Solutions, reach out to Rick and I'll make sure I get Rick's email in the chat. And so Heather and Kat can send it out with the recording as well. So you've got Rick's contact info. Anne-Marie, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sorry, my camera, something's wrong with my camera. I'm not trying to be stealth. I thank you very much, because this has been like something that's been driving me nuts to know how this is going to work for appraisals. And what I was kind of really wondering was more from when you're taking a listing, you know, when this, you know, trying to articulate to the seller the value of this specifically the agent concession, because really, in a lot of ways, as we all know, it's semantics, right? The buyer always paid it. But we offered this as a way to entice, and it's a marketing fee, right? So if the seller's pushing back, it would be nice to be able to say, well, I'm in Southern California, so $1 million is not even our average price point, but $1 million, you know, you don't have $1 million home, you have a whatever 970 home, a nine, whatever the dollar amount was, whatever the average is in that market. And to be able to sort of articulate that. Now in our MLS, I posted in the chat, we're breaking it out. So if everyone's using it right, we should have historical data that says what was given both in financing costs, closing costs, and agent costs. But that was really what I was wanting to know, was like, are the appraisers going to be sort of helping us with this to basically back up our, you know, our conversation with the seller, saying, you know, this is, you don't have that $1 million home that you think you did, because that did count with closing costs. We just never really, you know, it was always assumed before. Does that make sense? That's really why I want, and that's why I've been wanting to talk to an appraiser, because to me, that's really where the argument is, because it was always the buyer's closing costs. It was always paid for by the seller, by the buyer.
Right. Yeah. You know, they're going to look at what the market says. And so what you're saying is, if I understand your question correctly, is that you're listing it and they believe it's a $1 million home. And
right. I'm not going to pay the buyer's costs, and I'm going to list it for $1 million.
Yeah. We see a little bit of that. We get a little pushback on sometimes when you're doing the fee comes across when it's somewhere in the, you know, middle of nowhere, and they're like, well, the appraiser has to drive, and they're like, well, I'm not going to pay that. And it's like, well, you know, you own a $4 million home. Like, what do you expect? You're not going to get it for $350. Yeah, you know, I think appraisers are gonna just look at that, and once again, it's really going to depend on what the market says, and it's really going to depend on what it looks like. If that scenarios are so different, and every appraiser looks at it differently. Most appraisers are going to wait and see. They're not going to really adjust for anything. I don't think you'll see adjustments for these concessions probably for 6 months to a year until you get enough data to do it. And get
Even though that's interesting in mine, because mine is broken out. Our market, our CRMLS does break it out, so the information is there.
It is there, and then that's where they lean to. By in the slide presentation, they lean to that it didn't matter. It hasn't mattered for, you know, one guy said it hasn't mattered for 20 years. What does anyone think it's going to matter now?
Well, it would, in that if you had a $10,000 closing cost for whatever reason,
Right.
You would adjust for the 10,000. So,
right,
you know, I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but
yeah, because you're going to get some appraisers that are going to, you know, and that's the other flip side. Some appraisers are going to look at it and go, well, 10,000 isn't really what's happening here. It's 20,000. Because the market's telling me it's 20, it's not 10. So I'm going to go and adjust the comp for 20 because I think that's what the average of the market is. Because some are leaning that way. And then now you're going to go over 10. But it's all going to depend on what the appraiser decides to do. Even if it's broken out, that's really going to paint. But a lot of them that I talk to, they're really not, even though it's broken out, even though it's there, I think they're going to take the wait and see stance and just see how it starts to affect the market.
So then we need you back on here in 6 months.
That's what I was going to suggest, actually.
Yeah, really know, and we'll really see what happens and how appraisers are doing anything, because we'll start tracking that on our end and start looking at like how they're adjusting and how they're getting that done for sure. And what a lot of them are going to do, because I'll go re-poll everybody in 6 months as well that I spoke to. And I spoke to about 15, almost 20 appraisers that I know, asking them, what are you going to do? And most of them, they're not going to do much. They're going to just kind of wait and see. Because the problem is then how do you when it comes down to it, then, you know, it doesn't really affect that purchase price. It didn't in the past, and that's where a lot of them are going. They paid it all these years, so it doesn't really affect it. It's still the purchase price. And that's how they kind of looking at it and the stance they're taking. And then we'll see if we get any guidance from Fannie and Freddie as well, because that's going to be the big one, what they decide. And their approach now is they're going to wait and see. They have no official comment on what they're going to do with that yet, because they want to see what it's going to trend.
And Rick, when Fannie and Freddie chime in, that's when we're going to see this enticement, right? The concession truly being a concession and not, you know, like an enticement to buy, to, you know, to the example that Adrian gave earlier, it was a marketing strategy to get it sold quickly, versus compensating for a $300,000 value by adding 20 grand to the price.
Right.
Then it's an enticement to buy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, so for a lot of you who don't know, I'm going to give you this snippet here. Fannie and Freddie have been collecting our appraisal data and reports since 2006. And they have, every time we put a report in, it goes into their algorithm and they see what appraisers have done. They run it through, they go look at everything, and then they spits out a big report for underwriters. We don't get it. We do get a little smidget of the report, but what it's doing is it compares myself to myself. Then it compares me to all the appraisers, and it scores our reports from 1 to 5. 1 being great, 5 not so good. If it scores a 4 or a 5, usually it's overvaluation, it's appraisal practice, it's everything. So currently, of course, the hot button is all the words that we use. So what happens is if we use average or good or house of worship, or we mention any type of ethnicity in a neighborhood, it automatically pops it. Freddie and Fannie will not accept our report. It shows us in it where we did it, and we have to remove it because it is subjective. Now, this is a whole nother rabbit hole, but my point is they are going to track all this, and then they're going to decide what to do. And that algorithm is already in play, and they're going to let it go for a year or 6 months, see what the trends are, and then they're going to make what they want or how we need to look at it, and they'll tell us because they track it, everything.
I am so glad you said that, Rick, because, you know, the real estate industry in itself has its own set of regulations, which have recently changed. Mortgage went through Harahopa and the regulation of the industry back in the day, I mean, over a decade ago. So we all have our own, in the mortgage world, we have our own regulations. Appraisers are no different. Same with insurance. Like, everybody's got their own opinion on what we can and can't do.
Yep.
And all of us are coming together in one transaction to transfer a property from a seller to a buyer, but everybody's got an opinion about how that can happen and what's allowed. So Rick, thanks for just, you know, opening that rabbit hole a little bit, so everybody realizes you've got your own set of criteria.
And then I'll let you guys know that this is your other little niblet you get today, is in December of this year, they are rolling out a new form for appraisers to start using. It's going to be tested from now until the middle of next year, and then it rolls out nationwide. They are retiring the typical form you look at today. That is going to be called the 1004 legacy form. And they're bringing a completely new and different form. And I am telling you, it's different from night and day. It is unbelievable. And look forward to, you guys will start seeing that coming up. It's better readable. Most of the tests they did a test with a sample of reports they sent to buyers and agents and different things, and they got a resounding 96% of them agreed that this form is much, much better and more readable and more user-friendly. That's coming your way. Not that you need anything else coming your way, but it's going to be here.
Better in what way, Rick?
You know,
Any examples? Sorry.
Yeah, so better, I'll give you page 1. So page 1 is going to have a picture of the subject. It's going to have the address. It's going to have what the purchase price was. It's going to tell you the appraised value. It's going to tell you right up front if it's subject to or as is. It's going to tell you what those conditions are if it is subject to. And in everything, so what do you do right now? If you look at a report, what do you see? See addendum, see addendum, see addendum, see addendum. So you got to go looking at the addendum and you play hunt and seek and try to find it. Now everything will be right on the page. So if you're talking about page number 1 or page 2, comp 1, it's going to have everything on comp 1 on that page. Every page is going to have all explanation. You're not going to have to run and go find anything. And it's more user friendly. Think of it as a little pamphlet or a magazine or a book. How it works, it's a TurboTax. You know, I don't know what my time looks like. It's a TurboTax. So what they do is you just order an appraisal. The lender does. We put the address in. It asks, is there an ADU? Boom, ADU. Then it opens a new window. Does it have this? Then it builds like TurboTax. And that's how the report gets built now. And it's just way user friendly. And it's going to be a challenge. Like we get classes starting in December, and I've told every appraiser I talk to, take the class at 7 hours, learn the report. Because right now, you know, we've been doing this report for what, 18 years now. I have. You just go in, you know, your muscle memory. Now it's completely different. Completely. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it's coming. It's just more user friendly. And for especially for consumer, you're not going to hunt and find and peck and get the surprise. Like on the bottom of page 5 of the addendum, subject to this, and this, and everyone thought they were all good to go, and then all of a sudden they find out they're not. So
That's good, because I always found that report so confusing.
Yep, it is. In 6 months, maybe I'll have a little copy if we do this again, and I'll share it with everybody so they can take a look at it.
Well,
Yeah, you're on mute. Are you talking?
Right. Yep. I was just saying we're almost at the hour. So any final thoughts before we go? I would also thank you for everyone for being here. This one was a follow-up to the previous webinar we did, and we did this one because you guys had questions and you asked for it. If there are specific topics that you guys are curious about learning more on, please send them to us, because we do these for you guys. And so we can sit in a room and come up with our own ideas, but we'd rather hear from you, and we'd rather bring you content that you guys truly want and need. So feel free to email us if you have an idea. Chances are, if you're thinking about it, someone else's as well. And we would love to structure these webinars to your needs instead of the things that we just think are interesting. But thank you so much for
really
being
great
here.
people that will come on these webinars. I was going to say the same thing, Kat, so I'm glad you said that. But you'll all get the recording. We'll send it out. And if you do have topics, just reply to the email, because it will come back to us. Because I mean, it would be super helpful as we plan our 2025 if you guys could send some topics and even some people you would love to see on here. We all know a lot of really awesome people. So please, please, please let us know. And
Yes.
thank you, Rick. That was amazing. I really appreciate your time. You'll be on our 2025 calendar. We'll get you on it early in the year.
I'm always to help.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a
Everybody
great,
have a great rest of your week.
yeah.
Thank you.